everyone. It is so nice to see you all today. My name is Emily. I'm the Adult Services Librarian here at the Lucius E. and LCC Birch Junior Library in Collierville, Tennessee.
And I'm Meredith Campbell. I'm an Adult Library Associate here.
And we are so happy we're going to be talking with Julie Clark, the author, today about her latest book, The Last Flight. We would like to thank first the team over at Humanities Tennessee. We'd like to thank Serenity Gerbman. She's the Director of Literature and Language Programs, and also Patrick Schaffner. He is the Program Officer there at Humanities Tennessee. So thank you to everybody who is helping us put this program together today. And we would like to tell you a little bit about our author who's going to be joining us, Julie Clark. She is a New York Times best-selling author. She has 2 books that she has written, and her first one is The Ones We Chose. It's published in 2018 and has been optioned for television by Lionsgate. I'm so excited to see that come to the screen. And the book that we're talking about today earned stars reviews from Kirkus, from Publishers Weekly and Library Journal. Now, Julie herself was born and raised in Santa Monica, and she now lives there and teaches and also writes with her 2 boys and her golden doodle. And so we are so happy to have her here with us today.
Hello, how are you guys?
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Julie. It is so nice to have you. How's the weather over there in California? Gorgeous.
Really pretty today. Nice and cool. But sunny. Yeah, not like what other people have been enduring all over the country, I think.
Right. Now we've been pretty lucky with the weather here as well. A little bit of warm temperatures, but nothing too uncomfortable. We are so excited to get to talk about your novel. Meredith and I have both had a lot of fun reading it. We loved the characters, we loved the plot twists, and so we're looking forward to getting to chat with you today. Would you be willing to introduce the book to those of our viewers who may not have started reading it yet and may not be too familiar with the plot?
Yeah, so The Last Flight is the story of Claire Cook, and she is married into a very powerful political family, kind of similar to the Kennedys, I would say, maybe a tier below. And the world loves her husband, Rory. He's, everybody's dream. But what they don't know is that behind closed doors, Rory is abusive and dangerous and escalating. And Claire has been working for a year or 2 on a plan to leave him. She doesn't want to bother divorcing him because he just would make that off. He would never let her, basically. And she doesn't want to go public with what he does to her because she's already kind of seen how people treat women who come forward and speak out against powerful men. She just wants to be free. So she has, over the last year, gathered a large stash of cash, a new identity, a new passport, new name, new everything. She has her plan meticulously scheduled. She's going to disappear across the border in Detroit, over into Canada, and vanish. She just is done. And of course, that plan falls apart, and she finds herself at JFK, kind of about hours away from Rory, her husband, figuring out what she was going to do. And so at that point, she meets a woman at an airport bar who seems equally desperate to kind of escape some of the consequences of the life that she is living. And the 2 women hatch a last-minute plan to trade plane tickets. So Claire will travel to Oakland as Eva, and Eva will travel to Puerto Rico as Claire. And they think that, the switch will give each of the women a way to kind of get a head start from whoever may be looking for them. But when Claire gets off the plane in Oakland, she realizes that the Puerto Rico plane crashed. News of her death is about to spread across the country. She needs a place to hide out. And the only place she has is Eva's house, which she knows is empty. And she has the keys. She has her driver's license. She has everything of Eva's. And so she decides to go to Eva's house to hide out. But what she doesn't know is that people in Berkeley have figured out that Eva has gone missing, and they are coming for their own answers as to where she's gone. So that's the main plot.
All right, thank you.
We really enjoyed the plot with the 2 women. How did you come up with the idea for the novel? And was it always 2 strong women characters?
Originally, I started with just Claire. And what I really was wanting to explore is whether a person could disappear in kind of today's tech-saturated world, whether it's even possible for somebody to do, and sort of what would they need to accomplish that outside of being like a federal witness protection program, right? So, I talked to some friends in the FBI, and I talked to other people, police officers and things, about like, how would a person go about doing that? And, I played around with the idea of perhaps Claire was supposed to be maybe at the World Trade Center on 9/11, and people just assumed that she had died. But what I really was looking for was a way for everybody to believe her to be dead without her actually being dead, and without any evidence, like no body, right? And so, someone else wrote that 9/11 book before I could really get very far in this one. So I had to make a quick pivot to another. How would another way that somebody could disappear, be presumed dead, but without having any like physical evidence to actually confirm it? And so I thought maybe a plane crash over water, because bodies, I think, at that point are hard to recover, and things happen. So at that point, it's like I started thinking about, well, but if you're either on the plane or you're not on the plane, right? You can't, you scan onto the plane and then you're recorded onto the plane. So if she's on the plane, she'll be recorded on the plane. But if she's not on the plane, they'll know she's not on the plane. So at that point, Eva was born. I needed somebody willing to trade a plane ticket with her so that Claire would be scanned onto the flight, but not actually be on that flight. So that's sort of how it came to be.
Now, one of the most interesting things about her disappearance is, it is so true when she's planning to disappear. She can't rely on anybody once she's gone, whether she's going to Canada or whether she's trading plane tickets and ending up in California. Once she's there is nobody that she can contact from her.
Right.
That was so fascinating to me. And that was giving me anxiety, because I was like, oh, if I disappeared and suddenly was on my own with nothing, how would I deal with not being able to reach out to a friend, never being able to contact a family member again? So that led to a lot of tension in the plot. Good. That was fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that that's something that I spent a lot of time thinking about. You think about how desperate you are in the moment of needing to escape. But I think that you don't necessarily think through what the lifelong implications of that would be. And I also don't know that that's entirely possible for you to do. I just don't know that you could ever really never reach out to family, never reach out to friends, never, it would be incredibly hard. And so I think you trade one hardship for another hardship. And it's definitely a trade that I think would be worth it, being in a dangerous and abusive marriage, or just struggling with the idea that you can never go back, I think there are a lot of people who live a life where they know they can never go back for whatever reason. And it's hard, but it's doable.
Right. And that's certainly true for both Eva and Claire for their different circumstances. Eva, who is fleeing her husband, and Claire, who is fleeing, this life that she's fallen into with drug dealing and with Dex, trying to run away from these influences that they have in their lives and these choices that they've made, one way or the other. How do you, when you're writing, how do you create these characters and make them seem real? Because both Eva and Claire seemed like such real people as I was reading the book.
Yeah, I think it's just spending time with them, and so Claire came first, and her marriage with Rory and the abuse and all of that. And then I needed to give Eva kind of a backstory that was equally dire, but different, One thing that the women do actually have in common is that both of them don't really have any family to speak of. Eva was kind of deposited at, a group home when she was young, and she kind of raised herself in foster homes and a group home, and, carved her way out of there with, being smart and being good at school and, getting into Berkeley. And, of course, then when something bad happens to her at Berkeley, there's nobody there to help her manage that or navigate that. And so, and Claire's mom and sister are passed away, and so they're really kind of alone in the world. And so I really wanted to kind of have that be a parallel between them, but yet have what they're running from. Eva has kind of made a life for herself in the drug underworld in the Bay Area, and Claire has not, obviously. But to make their problems different enough that they would feel separate, not the same person,
Yeah, they definitely feel like distinct characters. Yeah, I felt really attached to both of them as we were going through the novel. I was worried about them.
So do you write both of the storylines separately and then kind of merge them together? How do you do that?
I wrote the book kind of straight through, flipping back and forth as I felt I needed at the beginning. But then there were many weeks where I was just revising Claire's chapters or just revising Eva's chapters, making sure that everybody had a clear arc, emotional arc, a plot arc, all of that. And then reassembling the book was a challenge, you know, really trying to put it back together again and making sure that sort of their crises were mirroring each other as much as possible.
Did you have any special way that you, any special strategies used to keep all of these moving plot points, all straight? Did you use sticky notes on a wall, or did you, have a lot of, pieces of paper spread around you?
Yeah, I mean, I had note cards on a wall just to kind of help me sort of see the progression of the story. And, again, like when I was putting the book back together again, kind of reassembling the two POVs back into a cohesive novel, every chapter was on a note card and they were color coded. So I could easily see that they were balanced as well, so I had like blue for Claire and green for Eva or something. And I laid them out on the floor and just started putting them together. And then I could visually see sort of where, making sure that I was balanced. So I didn't have too many Claire chapters or I didn't have too many Eva chapters. So nobody got, left behind. And I think I also, I think I also marked them in a way where there were like abrupt chapter endings. So, so that was balanced too.
That was really effective. I noticed that there's a lot of cliffhangers in the novel as you go through. So you're leaving Eva behind for a moment, but you've always got that cliffhanger to make you want to get back to her story, as soon as possible. So I really I enjoyed that as I went through and read the book. You've got a lot of really good questions that go along with that are kind of drawing readers along as they're following these chapters through. I mean, you've got, did Eva survive the plane crash? I really was suspicious that Rory had something to do with that crash. The whole book, and I won't say about, whether he did or not, but the whole book, I was so suspicious that Rory had something to do with that plane crashing. And then you have to, as you're following Claire and Eva's stories, you're wondering, are they going to be able to pull this off? Are they going to find a new life especially a new life where they can be happier than they are in their previous circumstances? Because I think that's going to be, even if everything goes beautifully with the disappearance, that's going to be a real challenge if you're trying to build a life from scratch. So when you were plotting out the novel, like you said, you always made sure that there was a good stopping point at the end of each character's section. Were there any other things that you did to make sure that you were always maintaining that tension for readers?
Just kind of making sure that, constantly in my head, I'm thinking, how can I make this worse for them? And how can I take resources away from them? The natural inclination, I think, is for you to give, Claire lots of money as she tries to navigate this. And so I think an early draft, I had her have like maybe $1,000 or $2,000. And I just realized like, that's a lot of money. Like she'll be fine, And so I bumped it down to like 300, to where she really would need to think hard about every cup of coffee, every piece of food she buys for herself, because in that sense, then, she's really in a hard place.
Right. Even with, having Eva's house to stay in, she's got very little funds. She doesn't have access to, a lot of money. And, it felt so real. She had to go find work.
Right. Right.
Immediately in some place where she could pull off being this other person.
Right.
Can we go back and talk a little bit about the abusive relationships with the men? And it drew a lot on the Me Too movement. And Were you writing this during when that was kind of all
I was. I mean, I was working on revisions. I was definitely revising this during the Kavanaugh hearings, and just kind of that disbelief that a woman would have to work so hard in order to tell her truth, and still people were questioning her, you know. So I think that really had a huge impact on sort of what does it take for somebody to be believed, you know. Yeah, I think it definitely impacted the book.
Do you think we've made any progress since the book's been published?
No.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
You know.
That's a sad thing. It's still hard. You know, you see these famous figures, these politicians, people in the acting world. You know, they have sports figures, and it's dozens of women coming out and making these accusations, and it's still everyone just, you know, doesn't. It's so hard for some people to believe.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think a lot about that Stanford swimmer, you know, who basically got off, you know, because he's young, and you know, and I think that, you know, the defense was he's young and he has his whole life ahead of him, and it's like, wow, you know, okay, that's how we're gonna go, okay. You know, what message does that send to women everywhere? So I wanted to write a book where the women were strong and they were not victims. I wanted to make sure that neither Claire nor Eva were wringing their hands, woe is me, how did I get into this mess? They were very much owning the mistakes and the choices that they've made, but they were also very much actively working toward fixing that, you know. And so even though Claire is abused by her husband and terrorized by him, she has a real sense of agency all the way through. Even in the marriage, she has a sense of agency. She has a determination that she's not going to stay in this marriage, and she's not going to live her whole life like this, and that it's worth it to her to give up everything in order to kind of be free of him. It's worth it to her.
So I think, you know, the book really effectively addresses some of those issues that women are facing. Did you, as you write in the future, have you seen any other societal issues that you think might be the seed of a plot of a story that have really inspired you as as you're brainstorming?
You know, my next book is sort of along the same lines. It's called The Lies I Tell, and it's about a female con artist who targets corrupt men. So it's sort of along the same themes as The Last Flight, but different in that, you know, there's not abuse in this particular book, but it is a woman who sees men, powerful men, taking advantage of situations and doing something about it. You know, she's taking things into her own hands because nobody else is doing anything, you know, and so she puts it on herself to, you know, get these men to pay for what they've done.
That was one thing that stood out in the book as well. In Eva's first situation that she faced with Wade in the college, it really stood out to me that when she went in for to talk to the school officials about what had happened, where she was making these drugs in chemistry lab at the behest of this sports star. You know, she comes in and she doesn't have an advocate.
Yeah.
There's no one to tell her that she can defend herself, and there's no one on her side. Whereas you've got Wade coming in, and of course he's the darling, the sports darling of the school, and so he's already got all of this, you know, impetus behind him to keep him in school and to give him a second chance. But Eva gets, you know, she doesn't know how, and she doesn't have anyone helping her find out how to stand up for herself.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's pretty typical. You know, I mean, I worked in college athletics, and I know the graces that are given to student athletes, especially student athletes who earn a lot of money for their university. So, you know, they get a lot of passes, or a lot of like gentle consequences, I should say, you know.
Right. And how do you feel like the situation like that, where Eva found herself suddenly kicked out of college, did that sort of predispose her to making the decisions that she made after she was suddenly left?
Definitely. I mean, she had no other options, you know. She really saw a way for herself. And I think at the time she sort of thought it was temporary, you know, just until she could figure something out. But, you know, again, she's what, 20, 21, 22 at this time. So it's like, you know, people's brains aren't fully developed until they're 25 or 26. And so kids that age in particular are adults, but they don't always have the ability to think through their decisions and what the consequences, the long-term consequences are. Like, they literally physically can't do it. And so, you know, that she thought that she could dip into that kind of life and then step out again was, you know, naive, but also just, it didn't occur to her that she wouldn't be able to do that, you know?
Right. And even Claire's situation, where she is probably a little bit more mature, you know, and she's had probably a better start in life, better circumstances. She falls into this abusive relationship. And even for Claire, it was 10 years, right, before she was able to finally start making plans to get out of that situation. And that felt really real to me, because, you know, when you find yourself in one, it can be paralyzing.
Well, that, and they don't start out that way, you know. Right. So I would imagine Claire's life, year 1, year 2, year 3, it's just, you know, he has a temper. He yells a lot, you know, and then maybe year 4, year 5, year 6, it's, you know, no, you know, he shoved me that one time, but he didn't mean it. Or, you know, I mean, I think that those things build over time. You know, you don't start dating somebody and fall in love with somebody and they're hitting you all the while. You know, that evolves.
Even after she left him, you know, even after they've swapped tickets and she's gotten on a plane and Eva's gotten on the other plane, it really stood out to me how her attitude towards her husband changed over the course of the book. On page 60, she still says, despite his temper, I know Rory loved me in his own broken way. And so, you know, she's her attitudes towards Rory are evolving as she has a chance to step back and look at it, you know, from a distance. And I was wondering, you know, there are so many people that are in situations that are similar to this in their relationships, either, you know, similar to Eva's or to Claire's, or in another, you know, parallel type of situation. And I was wondering if you had any advice that you would want to give to a reader that sees parallels to their own life in the situation that Eva or Claire is in.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are options available for you, organizations that can help, local organizations, national organizations, but you have to be ready, you know. I mean, it's just one of those things where, you know, if you're a friend of somebody who's in a situation like that, you have to really be ready to assist, and I think give them the space to make these decisions, because I think a lot of times people in those situations, when they feel pushed or rushed or kind of prodded into doing something, it's incredibly scary. Then you feel like you're being abused on all different fronts, you know, that you don't have a safe place to go. So, you know, it takes time to be ready for something like that, I think.
Absolutely.
On a lighter note, we've been daydreaming about if we just disappeared. Where would you go if you were going to suddenly disappear?
I don't know. I think the mountains. I would like to disappear in the mountains somewhere, probably.
Sounds good. Because you have the ocean there.
I do, right? Yeah.
Oh, we were joking, if we lost our internet connection, we were going to slip away and switch outfits and come back and see if anybody
could, that would be funny.
Change glasses. Yeah, so we were having a lot of fun with this question. So we've got in addition to Eva and Claire, who are great main characters, we've got some really good supporting characters in the novel. My favorite personally was Liz.
Yeah.
She is such a supportive and kind. She's that friend that you want to have if you're in a situation like this. She was non-judgmental, and she, you know, was able to give Eva some of that space. Did you have anybody in real life who might have been an inspiration for Liz?
No, what I really wanted to do was give Eva the one thing that she was craving, her entire life, which is sort of a mother figure. You know, she spent her life saying she didn't need it. She was fine. You know, her mother was a drug addict, and, you know, she just didn't need that connection. But, you know, all the while, it was really the one thing that she was missing. And so, you know, to be able to give Eva that in Liz, I think was my main goal in creating Liz, was to give her somebody who can give her that unconditional love that she's never, ever had.
Absolutely. Were any of your other characters based on real people, or were they?
No, none of them were. I mean, yeah, none of them were. All created out of my imagination.
You did a fantastic job with them. But
Thank
I
you.
love Liz.
We were talking about the main characters were all politicians and drug dealers and DEA agents.
Yeah.
What kind of research did you do to build those characters?
Well, like I said, I talked to an FBI agent who actually kind of worked in the drug enforcement arm of the FBI for a while, and he sort of helped me flesh out Agent Castro and kind of what kinds of things would Agent Castro do or say to make him kind of realistic, and the things that he would want Eva to do, you know, and the things that he would be able to give her, you know, that Eva was like wanting witness protection. And, you know, my friend said, you know, they just really, I know what you see on TV and, you know, read in books, but like witness protection is really expensive and very unusual and probably not likely to be given to kind of somebody on the lower end like Eva, you know? So yeah, just things like that, that really kind of helped make it a little more realistic.
And it did. You know, I was disappointed. I was crushed along with
Yeah.
Eva when he finally said, you know, no, we can't do witness protection for you.
Mm-hmm.
We were wondering too, as you're writing, you know, you see when you watch a film, you know, you always check the extras and there's always, you know, deleted scenes or bloopers.
Yeah.
Did you have any sections of the novel like that you had to leave on the editing room floor?
Lots. I mean, I think there's one where Claire goes back to New York to confront Rory in person, you know, and just, yeah, there's lots. Your final draft is usually very, very different from your first draft, and that's a good thing.
How long did it take you to write?
I want to say probably from the moment I sat down to start drafting to the moment we sold it, I want to say maybe 18 months. Yeah.
We've got a question here from the chat, and they would like to know if you yourself read true crime or if you listen to podcasts, and if any of the true stories that you've heard have influenced how you chose to write the book, and is truth stranger than fiction?
I definitely do listen to a lot of true crime podcasts. Mostly, I don't necessarily read true crime books, but the true crime podcasts give me lots of ideas, not necessarily for like a plot idea, but more for like how a character would get into or out of a situation, you know? So they're very, I get a lot of inspiration on how to solve my character's problems from those particular podcasts, not necessarily like the idea for a book, but yeah, they're very valuable to me.
What are some of your favorite podcasts?
Oh my gosh, you're putting me on the spot. I don't know. I would have to look them up because I'm terrible with titles and names, but really just any true crime.
Awesome. Thank you. All right.
Well, we were wondering if you were writing full time now or if you were still teaching school.
I still teach. I like teaching. I like the balance of my day. Writing full time is lonely and frustrating, and I confuse easily. So, you know, if I spend too much time on any one thing trying to noodle through a plot hole, I generally think myself into a knot, and then I can't figure out what was I even talking about? What was I trying to do in the first place? So I have a pretty limited writing window of time every day. It's usually about 2 to 3 hours when I'm teaching, and that's it. Then I'm done and no more for the day. And I think that, you know, your brain works on things while you're doing other things. So while I go off to school and teach and spend time with my students, my brain's still working, you know, and then the next day when I come back to it, things feel a little easier or solutions appear. And so I actually really like having the ability to step away from the book and go do something completely different that doesn't have anything to do with publishing or, reviews or sales or lists or, plot holes or anything like that. It's refreshing. So I don't plan on quitting anytime soon.
So during the pandemic, did you teach your classes virtually?
I did. Yeah. This is my classroom. Yeah. Yeah.
So one thing we both agreed on, and everybody in the library that we were telling about the plot of the novel, because we were talking about it with all of our coworkers and everybody that passed by, is we all agreed that this would make an absolutely fantastic film.
Yeah.
Is there any, even just a TV series, we'd love to see it on TV. Do you have any news about whether this story might someday come to the big or small screen?
I have no news that I am able to share with you right now. We'll put it that way.
We're going to keep our fingers crossed, because I would love to see this come to the screen.
Yeah.
And we were talking, do you have any dream casting for Eva or Claire?
I am not able to do that at this time either.
We'll be making our own, cast of characters that we'll be matching up our actresses and
What about your first book? Is there any news there?
No, that one is with Lionsgate right now, and they love it, and the option just got extended. So we're just hanging out there. It's great. It's an amazing team. Courtney Kemp is the one that she does Power, and so she loved the book several years ago, and so they're just happy to hang on to it for however long they want to hang on to it for. Yeah.
We've got another question here, a couple of them. We've got one that says, can you share how you find an agent and what that process was like, and if you've got any tips for new writers?
Definitely. I cold queried my agent. I participated in a contest called Pitch Wars, and that's where they match you up with agented and published writers to polish your manuscript to the point where it could be ready. And so I would look for opportunities like that. It was free for me to participate in that. And there's lots of really great opportunities for you to get your manuscript in the best possible shape. And I really couldn't have probably done it on my own. Looking back at how hard I worked for that contest, I just don't know that I would have pushed myself that hard. And it gives you a really good sort of idea of what it's like to work with an editor and the time crunch that you're usually under when you're on a deadline. But from there, I ended up querying people both in the contest, agents that were in the contest and agents outside of the contest, and ended up, I cold queried my agent, Molly, and she loved the book and offered, and, it was a no-brainer for me. So, but I would say for a writer who's looking for an agent, get your manuscript as polished as you possibly can and get outside readers, because you can only take your work so far. You're going to read it and you're going to be like, it's great. There's nothing else I can do to it. And that will be true. But when you have outside readers read it, they will tell you what more you could do to it. And you will say, oh my gosh, I never thought of that, or that's a great idea, or I don't know that I want to go that direction, but what if this, so having other people read your work is really, really, really important. And where you find those people are in those contests or online writing classes or in-person writing classes. My very first critique partner, I got from a UCLA extension writing program, So I think that you need those people in your life to be able to get your work polished. And then the next thing you need to do is write just maybe the best query letter you can possibly write. And it can't be too long, and it can't be too boring, and it can't tell all your plot lines, and it can't tell every character in the story. It's not a book report. It's like jacket copy. So a query reads like the back of a book. So it's enough to get an agent hooked, like, wow, this sounds great. I want to read some pages, and not too long at all. So those would be my tips for aspiring writers, if that's an agent is the way you want to go.
Thank you. That's fantastic advice. We've got another question here. It says, what was it like for you to see the book become such a huge success? Was it frustrating not to be able to do in-person bookstore events?
It was amazing to see the book kind of take off, and it's still amazing that people a year plus later are still booking events to talk about the book. I think that's great, and I love that. I think that, at first I was really disappointed. I had maybe a 5-city book tour that I was going to go on at, starting in June. I was supposed to go to New York. I was supposed to do all of these things. And it was really disappointing when all of that kind of got shut down. But I will say that the online events allowed me to do many more events that I would have been able to do in person. It made people who would have been reluctant to invite me to their book club more comfortable inviting me to their book club. Bookstores from across the country, I was able to meet and talk with them. I think that, it served me well, as somebody who has 2 kids at home, that traveling can be challenging when everybody's in school, taking time off work to get across the country for this, conference or that, event. I don't have to take any time off of work. I just need to schedule it around my schedule. And when I'm done, I click leave and I go inside and make dinner,
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And it's really helped us out today, too, being
Exactly.
in this program.
Right.
I'm so grateful for all the new technology that we have because we get to
Exactly.
speak to awesome people.
Exactly.
We've got one last question in the chat here. Is there a book that you love and love to put into other people's hands?
Well, I just did an event last night with Amy Mason Doan, whose newest book, Lady Sunshine, just released on Tuesday. This is her 3rd book. It is the story of a woman who gets called back to California. Her legendary music legend uncle has passed away, or her legend, like her aunt has passed away, and she's inherited her legendary uncle's entire song collection, backlist and everything, and his estate, where she spent a very formative summer bonding with that family and the secrets and things that happened that summer. So she returns and realizes that everything she thought was true when she was there for that one pivotal summer when she was 17 is maybe not true. And so she's kind of grappling with this, death of her aunt and the inheritance of this property and the backlist and, people who want to kind of make a tribute album to her uncle and her cousin. It's a story of friendship and loyalty and betrayal and love. It's just fantastic. And the setting, I would say, the setting will literally carry you away. It's dazzling.
Thank you. I've got that written down here.
Yeah, Lady Sunshine by Amy Mason Doan.
That's great.
Are there any other authors or books that you would recommend?
Yeah, I would say this one, The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. Fabulous, loved it. She's killing it. So it's fun to see her succeed and be number 1, still 8 weeks out on the New York Times list this week. So that's exciting. Chandler Baker has a new book out called The Husbands, if you're looking for a thriller. This one I think is coming out in August. It's coming out in August. So this one is fantastic. It is the story of this community where the husbands all seem to be like perfect husbands, where they help and they take care of the kids and they do literally half or more of the emotional labor and allow their wives to kind of have their professional life, right? Like the women in this community for some reason don't really have to make choices between, well, do I take my kids to soccer or do I go to this very important meeting? Like it's a no-brainer, I'm going to the important meeting, And so it's sort of what's going on there and who are these people and what makes these men so special. It's fantastic. It's really good.
Sounds almost like the Stepford Husbands.
Yes, it's very much that way. Yes, That's exactly what I would say.
Well, we will absolutely look forward to those and to your next book.
Yes. Do you know when that would be coming out?
This one, The Husbands, is coming out in August, I think. I want to say.
Okay.
Not 100% sure. It was supposed to come out in June, and then they pushed it, but I'm 90% sure it's August now. But Chandler Baker wrote The Whisper Network, and she's a fabulous writer. Yeah.
Do you have a date in mind for your next novel?
Hopefully June 2022.
June 2022. We will keep an eye. And what was the title of it again?
The Lies I Tell.
Fantastic. And if someone would like to purchase The Last Flight, do you have a favorite bookstore that you would like for them to?
I have 2. One is Diesel Books in Brentwood, they're my closest bookstore. So if you order from them, I can easily get over and sign a book. They just give me a call and say, come on over and sign some books. The other bookstore that I love equally is Pages, a bookstore in Manhattan Beach. I can also easily get down to see them to sign books if you would prefer for me to sign them down there too. So either one is fine.
Thank you. We had somebody say, can you say that title again for the August book? And that was The Husbands. Right?
Husbands, yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys, everyone on the stream for joining us today. Thank you, Julie, for coming out to answer our questions. It was so much fun. And thank you to the Humanities Tennessee team for getting us together and making this program possible. We appreciate everybody, and we hope to maybe get to chat with you again someday.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Have a
Thanks.